Well, it's too cold to go shoot, and I have not yet finished working up my 2022 load, so I can't pop over to the presses and get it started. So, what we're going to do tonight instead is The Film Room, the beginning of a series that I hope to do a couple of times through the course of this winter, looking at some footage and spending an awful lot of time analyzing every little tiny detail. So, without further ado, let's hop in. So in the first take of this video, which I accidentally did to a dead mic and a turned off camera, I said that I'm not using a script. As you can see, I'm recording my screen, and if you look in the little title bar there is in fact not a single script to be seen, or a script on screen for me to read. So you get the raw and uncut version of me, which is not as exciting maybe as the raw and uncut version of some other people, but it will at the least be maybe a little less coherent than my usual script reading style, so please bear with me, is what I mean to say. Anyway, so one of the things I've been doing this winter is working on a new reload method. The reason for that is because the gun was away at the factory for a while, and that means I haven't been dry firing for about a month. What that means is that all the stuff that was previously subconscious is now a little bit more conscious. I've got to think about it a little bit, which means that it's much easier to change habits. So, ordinarily when if I were trying to do this in the middle of the season when I've had the first inklings that the method that I'm switching to is faster, I would have been struggling the whole time. I'd be trying a drill, I would do it the old way, because that's a habit that was deeply ingrained, was on a subconscious level, and changing it's hard. Since my habits are now a little tiny bit rusty, I've got a much better chance of changing things successfully, which is what I'm doing. So let's take a look at the old way first. So this is me reloading. You see, I bring the gun all the way down to my belt and load the ammo there, then bring the gun back up on target. This is pretty quick. This one, I had the gun back on target in about 1.9 seconds. But it could be quicker. So let's take a look at the new way, and then we'll discuss some of the differences. I'll turn the timer off for now so it's not distracting you. Oops, it's also... I gotta turn the opacity off as well. Anyway, so... make sure I'm muted so I don't pollute the sound with the sound in the video. Anyway, so... the new way, you'll watch, the gun stays a little bit higher, and then I reload more at my belly or sternum level than down at the belt. So, why do this? Well, number one, back in about August or September, the timer said it was a little bit faster, even though I hadn't practiced it at all, which said it probably would be faster even more if I practiced it a lot. And if I do one thing, I practice these revolver reloads a lot. So let's... I've got this opacity control here, so I can compare the two mechanisms frame by frame, just about. And what that lets me do is kind of get deep into why the one way works better and why the other one works a little bit worse. So we'll start. The first thing I wanted to make sure that happened is that I react to the beep in about the same time for both methods. So I'm doing the comparison of relative timings of things here to see if it's faster, why it's faster, and where it's faster. And if I start at a different time in each of the videos that I'm comparing here, that I've got side by side, then the comparison is no longer valid. So we'll start. Listen for the beep there, and I start basically at the same frame in both. I have a hard time telling it apart. Yeah, actually, there's the frame right there, and in both videos the gun starts to move, which is pretty impressive. This is 120 frame per second video, so a frame is a little less than 100th of a second, and I hit it almost exactly the same. I wasn't really expecting to do that well, but I'll take it. So the next thing, over here to where the cylinder opens. So one thing I noticed that I do with the old method, kind of like the ideal form of that reload would be to open the cylinder with my arms extended, then bring the gun directly down toward my belt, and I never actually quite got around to doing that. I never quite managed to do that reliably. It does add a little bit of speed, but for whatever reason, this high emptying of the gun, especially since, as you can see in both cases, I'll show the old one because my head's further down. In both cases, I'm already looking at my belt for the next moon clip. So the new method, I've got the gun higher up because it ends up higher up, and it doesn't need to move as far. So, moving forward, I get to the moon clip at about the same time in both the old method and the new one. The gun stops at about the same time relative to the ammo coming to it as well. But the one subtle thing here that I think is actually a bigger improvement than I give it credit for is the difference in motion my weak hand makes with the moon clip. So in the old method, I have to lift it up off of the belt and then move my hand back down toward the gun. So that's it's kind of a jerky start-stop motion. My hand comes up off the belt, stops, and then goes back down. In the new method, since the gun is higher than my hand, I can kind of continue that motion from my belt all the way up. My hand lifts and stops above the gun rather than having to change direction. And that is a subtle thing, but trying to change direction quickly in this, this part of the video that we're talking about is, we'll flip the timer on real quick and take a look. 0.93, it's like basically a tenth of a second. So the less I have to do, like the less control is needed for that motion, the better, because it's got to go so fast anyway. So the ammo goes in, and the new method, I get the cylinder closed at closed, say, at about 140. The old method, I'm a little bit behind. It looks just about closed there, and that is 145 or 150. I would say 145, so it's about 500 slower there. But that's not where the difference ends up. So I've got the gun's basically closed at roughly the same time, say 500ths between the two. But the new method, the gun has to go a whole lot shorter of a distance to get back on target. So we let that run forward a little bit more. Now the new method, at this point, is basically back on. That's at 168 or so, 165. It does bounce a little bit, but I'm mostly counting time to extension. I can drill out any wobbles coming back onto target later on. The old method, on the other hand, is still on the way up, so it takes a little bit longer. About, 1.78? Let's let this run just a little bit more to make sure it's not bouncing. Yeah, so 1.8. So it's about a tenth faster, which is not like a huge difference, but you have to remember that I've also been practicing the old method of reloading for about a year and a half now, and the new method for, at the time of this recording, like 20 minutes. So the fact that it's already got a tenth on the old method with such a small amount of practice suggests to me that it is going to end up being substantially faster the more time I put into it. The nice thing about having a phone camera that records 120 frames per second and a laptop that can do this kind of real-time fancy comparison is that I don't need to make decisions like this in a vacuum. There's not a ton of stuff out there written on how best to reload a revolver. There are some Jerry Mitchell-like videos if you like the other method with the gun in the weak hand and the ammo in your strong hand, but that's another one that I had a hard time doing. I don't like having to reestablish my grip that many times during a stage. So I can't really help you if that's the way you prefer, but if you like this way, maybe it'll help. So that's the film room. I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive into the kind of nerdery that I bring to the sport. I do have a couple of other topics I want to do this on as the winter winds onward. In particular, there's one whose conclusion I have not yet even fully realized, fully come to, about how I leave positions, which those of you who've been watching for a while may have some idea what I'm talking about there, and if not, then it'll just have to be a surprise. There's also one about a stage at Battle for the North Coast where I thought I shot it pretty well, but I was 2 or 3 seconds behind the eventual winner, and I am looking to see if I can find where those 2 seconds are. And I've got a fairly good idea about that. But in either case, you'll have to wait and see what the end product is, so thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.